Okay, I'd like to call the June meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission meeting to order. Paula, would you call the roll?
Alan Brown.
Present.
Neela Crank-Clements. Suzanne Broadbent. Present. Heather Clemmer. Greg Eddington. George Massey.
Present.
Mary Jo Meacham.
Present.
Klaus Ryman Phillip.
Present.
Ann Zachris. You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to go over the meeting process that's on the back of the cover sheet of the agenda. The chairman will announce each case and ask interested parties to indicate their presence by raising their hand. Commissioners will discuss details of the case, calling on staff for further details. Following this discussion, commissioners may choose to ask questions of parties present. Interested persons may speak to support or protest the application. The applicant will be entitled to one brief rebuttal. Interaction between applicant and protestants on the floor is not permitted. Persons speaking are asked to approach the center podium one at a time to introduce themselves by name and address and to present their position as succinctly as possible. And if you would please sign in. The Commission asks each speaker to limit his or her remarks to no more than 5 minutes. Following the public hearing on an application, the Commission will take one of the following actions. 1, approve the certificate of appropriateness. 2, continue the proposal. 3, deny the proposal with prejudice, which means the application may not be resubmitted for at least 1 year unless the Commission determines that circumstances have changed. Or 4, deny the proposal without prejudice, which means the applicant may reapply at any time. When an application has been approved, and after a 10-day protest period has expired, the Historic Preservation Officer will mail the CA to the applicant. City construction permits cannot be issued until the CA has been issued. And contact HP staff for final design review inspection or to withdraw items that will not be completed. And finally, any person aggrieved by any decision granting or denying a CA may appeal to the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment. All appeals shall be made within 10 days of the Commission decision by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk of the BOA. Okay, and also if you would, silence your cell phones. Okay, item 2 from the Office of the Historic Preservation Officer. Katie?
Only that next week is the State Historic Preservation Conference in Tulsa. That's why we have our June meeting today on May 30th. The deadline for the following Commission meeting is Tuesday of next week, June 5th. And the July 2018 Commission meeting will actually be June 29th because the July meeting would have coincided with the 4th of July. That's all.
Keep everybody on their toes. Okay. All right. With that, let's move on to item 3, acceptance of minutes of the previous meeting from May 2nd. Any comments on the minutes or a motion?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Moved by Suzanne Broadbent and seconded by George Massey. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the minutes are accepted. Code enforcement report. Anyone from the city here? No? Any comments on the code enforcement report or questions?
If you see an actual number listed under the column where it says citation number, that means that they've proceeded from a notice of violation to an actual citation. You can take that number and contact code enforcement or the Action Center to find out more information, or you can contact HP staff on any of these.
Okay. All right, thank you. On to 5, continuance, announcements, and requests. None?
None. No new requests.
Okay. Public hearings, looks like none.
No dilapidated structures and no National Register nominations this month.
Okay. City consent docket cases. Would anybody like to consider one of these separately or move we approve the consent docket?
I'll move to approve the consent docket.
Okay.
Second.
Been moved by Suzanne Broadbent and seconded by George Massey. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the consent docket is approved, and if you're on the consent docket, you can leave. You've been approved. Unless you want to stick around and watch the fun. Okay, on to D, cases for individual consideration.
Okay. Yep, just to say one more time, if you are case number 1 through 5 under C, consent docket cases on the agenda, Your application is approved, and you can go. I see some people
Free to go.
sitting, so,
Looks like nobody got up. They want to stay.
yeah.
Okay.
HPCA 18-12 at 310 Northwest 16th Street, Heritage Hills, Ward 6, consideration and possible action on application of Psalm Carmen for certificate of appropriateness to, 1, install 8-foot tall privacy fence, elective. The commission reviewed this application at the previous, or 2 meetings ago, actually, and continued it with a request for some revised information. We have not received anything new from the applicant at this time, and staff had recommended a continuance. Probably the August 1st meeting would be appropriate, since we have not had any communication with the applicant.
Okay, and the applicant's not present today? Okay. Anybody like to make a motion?
I make a motion to continue HPCA 18-00012 to the August 1st meeting.
Second?
Moved by Joe Meacham and second by George Massey. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the item is continued.
HPCA 18-36 at 115 East Reno, historic landmark, individual property, Ward 7. Consideration and possible action on application of John Perro, 2424 Investments, by Kevin McCracken of Whiskey Chicks, for certificate of appropriateness to install sign faces, elective, 2, paint sign on Reno facade, elective, 3, cover windows with signs required, 4, install neon sign in transom required, 5, install neon lights on parapet required, 6, install chandelier and entryway required, 7, cover transom at fire exit required, and 8, replace scuppers at downspouts required. Same story with this one as the previous one. This was continued at the previous meeting with a request for additional documentation, and we have not received anything new from the applicant.
And the applicant is present? No? Okay, motion on this one.
I make a motion to continue HPCA 18-00036 to the
August 1st.
August 1st.
I'll second.
Oh, that threw me off there. I saw George reaching for... Okay, it's been moved by Joe Meacham and seconded by Klaus Ryman Phillip. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that item is continued also. Next.
All right, number 3, 18-55 at 813 Northwest 19th Street, Mesta Park, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application of Wilson Taylor by Brandon Swearingen for certificate of appropriateness to 2, replace front door, elective. And same story, this is the last one, but the same story here. This was continued for additional documentation, and we haven't received anything from the applicant.
And the applicant is present? Not present? Okay, another motion?
I make a motion to continue HPCA 18-00055 to the August 1st meeting.
Second.
Moved by Joe Meacham, seconded by George Massey. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that item is continued also. Next.
HPCA 18-00059 at 431 Northwest 17th Street, Heritage Hills, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application of Robert Abernathy by Sam Gresham of Sam Gresham Architects for certificate of appropriateness to 4, replace arbor, elective, and 7, open portion of servants' quarters and convert to outdoor kitchen, elective.
Okay. So is the applicant present? No? Well, did we get new information on this?
So some revised drawings came in that are in your packet, and then yet another set came in shortly after that that did not make it into the packet. You have them at your seat. The changes on item 4, replace arbor, the only change to the drawing is the height of the fence wall. There was some uncertainty as to the height of the existing wall as it was built versus the height of the existing wall as it was previously approved. So they revised that drawing to match the previously approved height and to just show the arbor in front of the wall with the height as approved rather than what they had initially proposed. It's a more significant change to the proposed work to the garage to open a portion of the servant quarters and convert to outdoor kitchen. They've proposed folding style doors across the opening rather than it previously just being a larger opening.
Can we accept the drawings that were sent in after the weren't these drawings, the current drawing showing the current request for the doors was sent in after the...
Right. So we discourage applicants from we discourage the commission from taking new documentation at the desk. You know, people will bring in photos and other things like that. It's kind of up to the commission to determine the level of comfort you have with new drawings that were not previously in your packet.
Supporting information, but not design changes necessarily.
Right.
So this isn't major, but yeah.
So
that needs to be continued.
yeah, I would say the June 29th meeting, since we have everything, we should have everything we need.
And replacing, staff is recommending approval of the arbor. There's just
Yes, on the arbor, it would just be to replace it with the fence at the appropriate height as documented.
Well, I would make a motion to approve item 4, HPCA 18-00059, as with the specific findings as noted by the staff in the staff report.
Second.
Okay, moved by Joe Meacham, and second by Suzanne Broadbent. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, that item is approved.
Since they are not here to more fully explain, on the photos we see of the outdoor kitchen, everything stays the same. It's just doors that accordion out or fold out. That's the only change. It's not taking a whole wall out or anything like that, right?
Doesn't look like it.
Right,
It
looks like they're removing less of the wall and instead creating an opening to insert those doors versus
So
what was first.
So the north and
proposed.
south walls would still be there, we assume?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they submit any information on the doors?
They submitted essentially an entire brochure on every possible door, on several options for the doors. I don't believe they specified a particular design, so.
Sounds
probably-
like we need to ask them some questions, so I would make a motion to continue item 7 on HPCA 18-00059 to the June 29th meeting.
Second. Second.
It's been moved by Joe Meacham, second by Suzanne Broadbent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, item 7 is continued. Thank you. Next.
HPCA 18-61 at 2101 North Francis Avenue, Mesta Park, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application of the City of Oklahoma City by Scott Vo of Erickson for AT&T Mobility. 4, certificate of appropriateness to 1, install small cell CRAN in the alley within platted street right-of-way, wood pole 26 feet tall with antenna, total height 30 feet elective. The reason it says the application is the City of Oklahoma City is because it is within the city right-of-way where utility companies have the ability to install various equipment. But Laura is our go-to source on all things small cell, so for the most part, I'm going to defer questions to her on
Did you know that?
on what are, she's like, yes, I know, unfortunately.
Okay. Is the applicant present? Okay. If you would state your name and where you live and sign in, please.
Jason Constable for AT&T at 405 North Broadway. Very briefly, small cells usher in the...
Could you also sign in?
Oh, yes, I will.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
Jason Constable for AT&T at 405 North Broadway. Small cells usher in the next generation of wireless technology, being 5G, which delivers gigabit-level download speeds. We've had extensive discussions with the city, as well as multiple cities within Oklahoma, about our deployment plans to deploy these small cells. What you see before you today, and there's another one, I believe it's item 8 as well, are existing poles that are within the public right-of-way, and we will be placing small cell infrastructures on those poles. All of the equipment will be located on top of the pole itself. There will be no ground equipment associated with it. There will be fiber provided to the equipment as well as electricity. And again, all of the equipment will be on the poles. The poles are existing today, and we believe, to the best of of our ability, we followed the process thus far.
Okay. This is, you said this is an existing pole,
Correct.
going on an existing pole. It looks like it was just installed.
It was installed about 9 months or so ago.
For this project?
Yes, for this project.
Oh, so it's really a new pole for this project.
So what I was trying to delineate between is that the pole is already up and functional.
Yeah. Just
Is there
curious,
any other equipment on the pole? Is it serving any other, providing any other service at this point?
No, not currently.
why can't these go on pre-existing poles, not one put in for this project?
So they certainly could. As part of our 5G small cell initiative, we're actually probably looking at hundreds of small cells within the city. Some of those poles, some of those small cells will go on AT&T poles within the right-of-way. Some of those will go on existing city infrastructure. We're working with, for example, light poles perhaps. We're working on a deal with OG&E right now to put those on existing light poles, or perhaps to swap those out with small cell equivalent versions, and then OG&E do the maintenance. We also have other deals we're working with PSO and other utility companies and such. So the way that they are engineered is they have a small radius of about 1,500 feet as opposed to a large macro tower which serves miles. So when the engineers look at exactly where we need to augment the coverage or where we need to deploy, they're very, very precise about the location where the small cell needs to go. So we certainly do have the ability to move it a few feet one way or the other way, but taking a small cell and moving it, maybe a block over completely compromises the whole small cell design, which is why we have so many different solutions that we'll have to utilize to deploy the entire infrastructure.
Well, if it was so specific, what would happen if the exact location was in the middle of somebody's backyard? You still have to move it, quite a distance to get it in the easement. So you do have the ability to move it around.
But we would, and certainly we do have the ability to move it around a foot or two. We wouldn't look to put any within backyards, anything like that. We're trying to be the best neighbor that we can.
Right, I understand that, but I'm saying if your precise location turned out to be in somebody's middle of the garage or yard, then you have like 20 to 50 feet to mess with to put it in an easement.
Mm-hmm.
So you do have the ability to move it more than a couple of feet.
What you would have to do is and typically they're kind of done in strings of about a dozen or so for kind of an area, right? So if you've mapped out your 12 and you say, okay, these are generally where I need these, and I have a little give of a few feet here on each one. If one of the 12 didn't quite work out, or you would have to move it 50 feet, for example, a 50-foot move would completely kind of nullify that design. You would probably have to then go back and re-engineer that whole 12 set of string.
Well, if you're looking at the easements, are you only looking at the easements that are like behind houses, or would we have easements like on the middle of the block, in the street, or on the side streets?
We're looking at we're looking at a variety of easements and right-of-ways, but when we do, we're very, very careful about what's there already. So, for example, if you look at this one, you've got some wooden poles there already, and so putting an additional wooden pole in an area where there's already wooden poles, we feel it works out fine. If we were to put it in, let's say, a neighborhood, or we do have some that may go in a neighborhood, in those cases we're looking at more light pole designs where they provide some lighting for the neighborhood as well, and they're more aesthetically pleasing than just a wooden pole.
So a light pole looks better than a wooden pole, but if you have wooden poles in the neighborhood, then you'd be on wooden poles. But like in a neighborhood that had underground electrical, then would you be putting up wooden poles?
But it wouldn't matter to us if the electrical was underground or above ground. I mean, if it was all underground and in the area used metal poles throughout, or there were no poles, then we would certainly be more sensitive to that and likely use light poles or stealth-type poles, yes.
In that image right there that's up on the screen, is that the pole we're talking about?
I don't believe that's the pole. If you go back to the other image, there's another pole there.
Is that an electric pole?
That is the pole right there. I do believe that is the pole.
That is
yes,
it?
That is the pole, yeah.
How tall is it?
39 feet, Franklin, is that right? I believe that's 39 feet.
39 feet.
I think the application said 26.
Okay.
Is that right? So
You probably need to come up and to the microphone because we have to record all this, so.
My name is Jimmy Franklin, and I'm at 7001 Northwest 23rd, and I'm network design for AT&T engineer.
Okay, good.
I have been involved with this particular pole, actually, and the 26 feet that I believe you referenced is the height of the attachment of what mobility will place on that pole. So this pole right here is probably truly a 30-foot pole or a 35-foot pole with probably 9 feet in the ground. So there's probably not but 30 feet extended above ground.
Our application that was submitted says existing 26-foot wooden utility pole. And to be clear, it's existing in the sense that it's there now, but it wasn't previously existing for some other use. Okay.
It was installed for this purpose.
Correct.
So there's 2 units. I was looking at the drawings. There's 2 units, one partway up and one on top. Is that right? Interesting.
Yes, Commissioner. So the way that it functions is you have a antenna at the very top of it, which is kind of a more canister-shaped device there. And then you would have 1 or 2 different radios that are on the sides of those.
Oh, okay. So potentially a lot of things hanging off this pole.
So you said that you were making deals with some of the utility companies. Is that one of the reasons that you can't use like the existing OG&E light poles right now? And then as a result, you have to put up an extra pole?
So we currently are in negotiations and working with OG&E on that, yes.
So if you guys worked out the licensing or however that works, could you in theory place the equipment on that power pole kind of near the house? Or
I'm sorry, what was the question?
if you had the licensing worked out with, I'm assuming that's OG&E.
That's a private
This
pole.
other pole here by the house. Correct.
That'd be a private pole.
Is it private?
Pardon? Go ahead.
Could you, Paula, could you flip back one right there? So this is in line with the electric poles along that easement, that alley. You couldn't use one of those electric poles.
At the time of this deployment, which was last year, later of last year, the initiative on the rollout for our initial CRAN site locations for Oklahoma City, there was not an agreement between AT&T or OG&E for us to, in fact, OG&E didn't want us placing a tower above their primaries or their secondaries on their cross arms.
Yeah.
That's why we're kind of extended over a little so that we won't conflict with the existing power lines in that.
Do you have an agreement now? Can you?
And the main consideration why OG&E wouldn't want AT&T or anybody else on one of their distribution poles is conflict with the National Electric Safety Code. Electric distribution cables and the communication space that you would attach to a pole on an electric distribution cable there has to be a certain amount of space and such, and in most cases that's just simply not available, and so therefore it's not an option.
So how close is the next pole or poles out from this pole?
I would have to go back and look at that string design.
I mean, on every block, 2 blocks, 5 blocks, or?
Set the
It'd be-
poles
it'd be
at
roughly-
every other block.
It'd be roughly 1,000 to anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 feet
Feet.
Yeah.
for when mobility came out to design that grid.
Back to the electric pole for a second. So you cannot place this equipment on OG&E electric poles. You cannot do that. I mean, technically.
Some of them we can, and some of them we can't. It kind of depends upon the electric distribution pole structure, how high it is, if there's enough room for a communication space below those electrical lines or not.
And this one wouldn't work.
Right,
Here.
correct. The other consideration is the height of the antenna and the radios has to be at a certain level for us as well to be able to properly serve the neighborhood as well.
So in a neighborhood like this, how many do you think that you would have? Really not that many, maybe.
No, as Franklin mentioned, that small cell will serve about a 1,500 or 1,000 to 1,500 type radius, right? And so there would be, you wouldn't want them on top of each other. That would just be duplicative.
I don't recall anything we've ever discussed for an easement. What is our authority for that?
Yeah.
Areas, have we? We have historic easements, but that's not.
It's a utility easement.
Yeah, so this is the utility easement that the
Right.
city has that is used for public purposes. And so,
Behind every house.
right.
No.
A certificate of appropriateness is required for work within the public right-of-way, even if it's the city putting in a sidewalk. That sort of
I
thing.
got it.
We do review that kind of thing. We have not seen this particular type of installation
Yeah.
before.
Well, the one thing that we were talking about is that our guidelines say that utility components should be placed as much as possible at the back of properties, as far away from sidewalks, curbs, and then it goes on of minimal height, which is the technical requirement for you, and other requirements. So we'd like to see them, we would call this a utility component, placed away from the street. I think that's our one of the issues here. So is there a possibility of moving that away from the street? Even if you have to have a new pole there? I mean,
I'm looking at the design
reused,
and the neighborhood, and I think if you were to move it, you would be in backyards there, and I think it would be very, very difficult to move that. The other consideration, too, is that the poles for the other 12 have already been set, or for the 12 applications have all been set. If we were to go back and do a redesign on it, then that would be the installation then of 12 new poles as well.
so if you move one, you have to move all of them.
Most likely.
Okay? Right now, it's in easement of somebody's property there anyhow, so
Correct.
it could be, close to that other pole, electric pole shown there. Are there any other poles close by? Are there any photographs that show, where's the next? It looks like there ought to be another one.
It's 1,000 to 1,500 feet away.
No, I'm talking about the electric poles.
Oh, the next electrical
Yeah, electric
pole.
poles.
That's just about 50 feet. It's in the next yard, it looks like.
Yeah, so I don't know. Just wondering what's around this. It does show a utility pole on your detailed site plan A2 across the street to the east that's on the street. And there's another circle. I don't know what that is. So, I don't know. What do you guys think?
How would you categorize the negotiations ongoing with OG&E right now?
I think they're very good. We've limited, one of the things that we've reached agreement with OG&E on right now is to do flat rate billing with them. So you'll notice that this pole here will not need a meter associated with it, which does cut down on some of the bulk of it. And in doing so, we have agreed to pay based upon the maximum consumption of power of the location. So we're paying quite a bit more in power than what the equipment would otherwise utilize, but that results in a simplified design for OG&E. It's a better solution for the neighborhood as well, as it negates an unsightly meter and that whole meter reading type process. The second phase that we're working on with OG&E is light poles right now, and that's also progressing really, really well. And once we finish with the light pole, then we'll begin on the electric distribution pole negotiations and see what we can come out from there. That typically is the largest issue and a very thorny issue. They tend to be very protective of their electric distribution poles, and for good reason. If those poles have issues or if they go down, then that impacts the electricity for the neighborhood. So certainly for good reason.
And the responsibility of liability issues and lightning strikes it or something like that. Right?
So all of our equipment is grounded, so it will be grounded. So if there's any lightning strikes, then it follow the normal electrical protocol. Everything is done within NESC and electrical code compliance as well.
Well, anybody have comments about this? I've got mixed feelings. Go, Suzanne, you got it.
Well, I just want to clarify, the picture we have to go with 2101 North Francis that shows the pole with the proposed shroud on top.
On the cover sheet? Or on the cover
This
sheet?
that was, it was on our, at our places when we got here
Yeah,
today.
on the cover sheet there, yeah.
It does show a meter. Now, you just said that meter will not be on that.
Meter
pole.
will not be on there, no.
Okay, all right. And it's kind of hard to figure out, how big is that proposed shroud? I see this view. What about from the other side? Is it just a small thing about like this?
The one on close to the ground?
No, the proposed shroud and
on top.
Yeah, for the antenna.
So I believe this is a Pico location. So the shroud, the antenna itself is maybe about yay tall and about yay round, and it sits at the very, very top of the pole. Then there's a shroud that goes kind of underneath it that basically hides all of the wiring and protects the wiring and such.
Suzanne, if you look at page A7, it looks to me like that shroud, if I'm reading it correctly, is 85 inches tall. Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I was
Is that
thinking.
inches?
That would be about right, yeah.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking. That's,
so
Well,
that's about
85
7
is
feet.
different than
yeah, I
It's
know.
about 7 feet.
Well, no, it won't be 7 feet. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about the antenna on the top. In addition to the antenna on the top, there is the radios that will go kind of mid between the poles. So I mentioned
one.
there will be an antenna at the very
Just looking
top
at
of
this,
it.
this page.
Okay.
Is that it?
So then there is a covering or a cabinet kind of shaped design, which is about that height there, and it'll have one or two radios mounted inside there as well as the electrical equipment. It's a complete cabinet,
Yeah.
and it'll have the radios and such enclosed within it.
We were just wondering what the size was of what you actually see. So it looks like it's about 7 feet tall.
It's not, I don't believe it's 7 feet tall. It's not taller than I am. I just visited one today.
Okay,
That's what it says.
well, the macro shroud dimensions,
This is a full, or is it a smaller version here? This says a full RF shroud assembly.
yeah, I'm looking
If I may approach, I can show a picture.
Okay, well, I'm just going off your drawings. So
yeah, 53 by 23 by 16 is what is,
What are you looking at?
oh, let's see what this is,
What
page A8.
A8. Okay, that's the lower unit, not the one on the top. There's 2 units.
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to get a sense of
And it's
how,
53 inches tall, which is about 4.5 feet.
yeah,
Yep.
trying to get a
They're
sense
pretty
of
big, but they're not,
how imposing these poles are going to be.
and they're
You
2
know,
feet, 2 feet across and a little over 4 feet tall for the lower one. And according to the drawing, the top one is about 7 feet tall and 16 inches in diameter. Am I not reading that right? I just want to understand the size.
Certainly,
Yeah.
certainly.
Yeah.
Again, the cabinet there, it's probably, it's a long cabinet. It's not 7 feet tall, I don't
Which
believe.
one,
but
which
it's-
one, the top one or the middle?
The middle one is a long cabinet. It's probably about 4.5, 5 feet.
Well, the
maybe
middle one, the drawing says 4.5.
4.5, right, that would give
The
out
top one
correct.
says it's about 7 feet.
Yeah, I'm not quite certain what that 7 feet then is referring to on the design, but the antennas that we have aren't 7 feet tall. It's roughly about that tall.
Yeah, the antennas Well, sound like I know what I'm talking about. I think like they're about 24 inches, but they're inside that cylindrical.
Inside the shroud, right. The shroud just covers, so again, I'm not entirely certain what the drawing depicts, but
Yeah.
if I could take a look at it, I may be able to decipher it, but
You want to look at it? Well, here's the one sheet I was looking at right there. Yeah, all right.
So the shroud, it does look like it's 7 feet tall, but it also includes or goes over a good portion of the pole itself.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at this here, this is the antenna that I was saying is about this tall,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's the antenna.
About 2 feet.
Right, and then you have over there kind of the mounting of it to the pole, then the shroud goes over a good
Yeah.
portion of the pole too.
Yeah.
So some of that length then is duplicative of the pole itself.
Yeah, but the shroud, the thing itself
Right,
is
right.
about 7 feet.
If that's what it says, then.
Yeah,
yep.
that's what it says. Assume it's right. It's your drawing.
So, just a second. So on page A8, what we're looking at there is what would be the meter if it was a pole that had a meter?
That's a,
Because that's the one that's
That's the lower one.
53 by 23.
Those are the cabinets, I believe, for the radios that will go about mid-span on the pole.
Okay.
that's the lower, that's the lower.
Yeah, I don't see that on this pole here, so I'm
That's
just...
right there, on the front sheet.
Yeah,
right
I'm
there.
looking at it.
It's right there,
Where is it?
right there. It kind of blends in. It's got the white.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So the existing infrastructure is kind of a long-range antenna, which is why you can't just mount it to existing towers that you have.
Right, so because we really need them at a certain height as well, because if you put the antennas too high, then they'll reach too far, and if they reach too far, they'll pick up too many customers, and they won't be able to deliver as much capacity, right? So we purposely limit the height of them so they only go to a certain range to best serve the customers within that range. Some of our more rural poles may be a little higher than what you see here, because then in a more rural setting, it would be acceptable for them to go a little further out. But if you were to put it like on the top of a large cell tower, yeah, it wouldn't be useful.
But even if you already had existing structure, you could just mount it lower, I'm assuming, or would there be interference?
Our plan certainly, of course, is that if, to the extent that we have existing infrastructure there, or there's existing infrastructure from an OG&E or from someone else that we can use and is within the design specs, then we would certainly use that. That would always be our first priority, is to use an existing structure.
But you can't use adjacent poles, so that doesn't apply here.
But I mean, we are looking at using OG&E light poles, so we're very, very close on getting that worked out. The distribution poles, the electric distribution poles is still a bit of a work in progress. To the extent we just have telephone poles that already have telephone attachments, that would also be a
Including
worthy
these right
candidate.
here?
Pardon?
Including these, you said you could or you can or cannot use
I was
those.
just speaking in general. Right. Currently, we don't have an agreement with OG&E to use electric distribution poles.
I guess okay, so there is no agreement right now.
We have an agreement for the flat rate billing, which alleviates the meters, and we're very, very close, and I believe we have an agreement in principle on OG&E-owned light poles.
Light poles,
Light
but
poles.
not power poles.
Not power poles.
Okay, I'm just trying to get specific to this location.
The agreement that we have is somewhat of a general attachment agreement that does apply to electric distribution poles, light poles, all those poles, but what we don't have is kind of, if I were to submit an application for an electric distribution pole right now, OG&E would likely reject it based upon it didn't meet any SC requirements. So we're continuing to negotiate with them to see what else that we can do, or what we can modify, or what we can fix to become in compliance with any SC with them, so that we can put on electric distribution poles.
Okay, so it's not possible at this time to use that existing electric pole.
That is correct.
And do you think it'd also be too far away from your grid?
Yes.
Okay, any more comments, questions?
Well, staff still, in their recommendations, were requesting additional information.
So at the time that the staff reports went out, the site plans that we had did not depict property lines. It didn't show the right-of-ways. So we could not tell exactly where these poles were or had already been installed. We couldn't tell whether they were actually in the right-of-way or on private property or not. You have the additional documentation that they submitted in front of you that does more clearly depict that. So we can now confirm that the proposed location is in the right-of-way, and we can see where it is in relation to things like driveways and curb cuts and property lines. So that was the missing information.
I guess my feeling is the guidelines say they need to try to locate at the rear of the property, which this is, from the primary street, but it's in the utility easement visible from the side street. But right across the street, there's another utility pole that's even closer to the street. I know one doesn't justify this location, but it is in a utility easement. And, so, I like to follow the guideline, and I don't think it was really intended for utility infrastructure, but...
it does look like it's as close to the property line as it could get, pretty much, based on the site plan on A2. I mean, it is right against that property line.
It's close to the fence.
Or is that
Right.
fence?
So,
I think it might be lot line, yeah.
My concern, and I don't think that we can, I'm not necessarily totally against it, but I just don't want this neighborhood to be treated like, well, there's a lot of poles, so who's going to care? We'll just put up another pole, and then you go to another neighborhood that, has less trees and doesn't have this kind of situation. You go, we've got to be really careful over here because the neighbors might get annoyed. So that's more my concern, is that, that you told us your justification. Well, there's a lot of poles already. So I think that's more our concern in the overall aspect of the neighborhood, that, we're treated as fairly, and we actually have specific guidelines where those other places don't. And so, like Quail Creek, they don't have all of their utilities are down. I mean, you put a pole in somebody's backyard and put a big old 7-foot thing on it, some people might be upset. So just because we have a lot of trees and we already have a lot of poles doesn't mean that we just, throw one more pole in the mix and it's okay.
this equipment, I'm trying to envision it mounted on something else. It'd still be the same equipment, whether it's on a metal pole or a decorative pole, or it's still going to have the same 8-foot tall, 7-foot tall unit on the top. It's going to be 28 feet tall, and the other unit, radio. So I don't know what the difference would be. What other kind of installation could you do here that would be less, as Joe was saying, less?
And again, Commissioner, thank you for the question. It's always been our best intent to be as invisible as possible, and so I certainly appreciate your concern and consideration on that. It's not so much we don't look at it as will anyone complain. I mean, we just certainly don't want anyone to complain, but we just try and match the surrounding area as best as possible. And so sometimes, if I were to, like this example here, I'm just looking at it, I could put up a ornate wooden type structure or ornate metal type structure, and it might draw unnecessary traction to it because it doesn't kind of blend in with the structure, and then people are driving by looking at it and thinking, what in the world is this? But certainly for other areas where there are already metal lights and there are already metal structures, that's certainly what we would do. We want to try and blend in and be as invisible as absolutely possible. We do have concealment type options that we're looking at, especially for some of our more downtown type locations that are metal throughout. Some of them will have lights on them. Some of them don't have lights. They're just a metal elongated pole.
But does this have the same equipment mounted on it?
It does, but in a different format. So, for example, on our stealth type equipment, it would be metal encased, and the cabinet that you see, instead of mounting it kind of mid-span there, it's all mounted on the ground. So it's kind of got like this podium. It's kind of got like a podium-type structure with the radios and such in it. And then from there, it's a, kind of an elongated type antenna up to the
There are
heat.
options.
Yeah, so we do certainly have a lot of different types of options and such, because we know that neighborhoods are different and aesthetics for each neighborhood are different, and so we just try and match them as best we can.
Well, I'm also looking at your next case, where you're proposing also mounting on a wooden pole in an alley easement, and it's located the second lot in. It's not located across the street. So I'm wondering why you could not move this one in away from the street. If you could do it on the next case, this.
And again, it's more the radius from one location to another location, and it's also kind of where is the congested area. Where are we seeing the real demand, and where are we seeing, you pull out your phone and it's kind of spinning. You may even have 2 or 3 bars already, but it's kind of spinning and it's not really working properly, and that's because there's so many users on the network. So it's kind of really looking more at that than it is trying to be uniform in how many feet or inches away from the easements. I mean, certainly we're going to follow all city guidelines, of course, but it's more that consideration about where is the area as opposed to...
On this particular case, have you looked at moving it away from the street?
In this particular case?
Yeah, like in the next lot over?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I don't know. It seems like they could look at that possibly, and if not, look at an alternate type of design. What do you think?
I mean, I would also like to see a photograph of what it looks like on a pole. I think that would
An actual finished?
Yeah. Have you installed one on a pole?
We currently have, I think we have 11 filed with the city. 2 of them go before you, the historic district, so we do not currently have any installed yet. I believe Verizon and some of our competitors do have some installed.
They're ahead of you, huh? Oh.
So it's really a brand new program that started in this neighborhood.
Well,
No.
yeah, so I mean, eventually, we'll have 100 or so within the city, hopefully.
But these are the first.
These first are, these applications are the first of 11. We have applications in Edmond, and we've submitted designs with a variety of other cities, too, that we're working with as well.
So but you have not actually installed any antennas on the poles?
I have not in Oklahoma, no.
You what?
I have not in Oklahoma, no.
Oh, okay.
So my concern is that it is too close to the street. And I, to chime in with what the chair said, I just think we should look at moving that pole back so that it's not just right on the street, and maybe even the alternative design. And if you've installed them in other places, there would be pictures from those other places, right, that are...
We don't have any installed in Oklahoma yet.
But
Other
states?
We do have some in other states, certainly. Yeah, and we've worked comprehensively with a lot of cities and such, and so we visited with, Eric and Wenger and Laura about this project and on multiple occasions, and we've provided different photos and such, and so we certainly feel like we've kind of, met with the city-type leaders, up front and been very, very up front. These are the 12 that are the 11 that we're looking at doing, and these are generally the locations, and the guidance that we got was, well, okay, put in your applications and let's look at it. I do want to caution the Commission. I'm certainly aware of some of the concerns and sympathetic to some of the concerns, but I do want to caution the Commission about not approving any of these, as it will require a very lengthy and expensive effort to go through and get with the RAND engineers and redesign the entire 12-string or 11-string type structures.
Well, we wouldn't want to cause that. I just wondered if we could, you can't move it to the next lot, say.
I know that.
That'll work.
Yeah, I know we
Sure it
wouldn't be able
won't
to move it 50 feet, right?
50
right,
feet would be too far.
Right, correct.
If I may, and pardon me, I'm just a country boy, but the only dog I had in this fight was originally, they wanted that pole on the opposite side of the street where you had seen, I guess, a photo across the street where
Yeah,
there was
there's
some poles.
on your site plan, it shows locates a power pole across the street.
Originally, they did want that on the that would be the east side of Francis. So it was me that instrumented us getting away from the street, like within 2 and 3 feet, for me to, and it got a lot of push, but it was because of the Cran site locations and the significance of their equipment, Mobility's equipment, in order to talk to the other. But I was able to get this approved to where I could get this relocated as far off as the street as it is. And honestly, that was just on everything that we've done so far as a network engineer and us having a relationship with the city, we really do. We review all of that and we call Mobility back and say, no, let's try this over here. So then they'll send their RAF engineer out and then they run their test and they say, okay, this 10 feet will be okay. Mm-hmm. And I've had them deny me 5 feet. I'm thinking, really? But it does. It's all about talking to tower.
What about the alternative design that you talked about, which is not a pole, but is a closer to the ground, maybe could be, hidden with some shrubbery or something like we've done with the telephone things?
It was a pole.
It would still be a pole, right? So the base of it is kind of more like this podium style, but then it would still have a pole protruding from the cabinet of it.
About the same height.
Yeah, and it would be all metal. I mean, if the commission were to say, do that, I would say, okay, that would be an acceptable alternative. But personally, I would feel like it would probably look out of place.
I'm in agreement there on the metal. I think it would just look unusual. People go, what's that? At least a wooden pole, they're like, hey.
We're used to that.
There are other wooden poles there. But I don't think that a metal pole would, I can see how it would help in a downtown, if people were brushing against it or something like that. But
well, I appreciate you saying that about working not to locate it close to the street like the one across the street and back a ways, kind of behind the fence line. So appreciate that. That is better. So it's an improvement that we weren't involved in, but.
Right. Yeah, and it seems like, based on the photos, I'm not sure if that alley has been vacated or closed, but definitely, it looks like the fences go down the very middle, so it'd be difficult to get a pole, and even if legally, there is still an easement. I'm wondering, the wood poles there, I think, I wonder if moving the lower equipment, I'm not sure what's called, what is that?
The radio shroud?
Yeah, that radio shroud, if that was a ground-mounted, it'd kind of blend in with the fence. You wouldn't...
Is that possible?
I believe that could be worked on if we wanted to make it ground-mounted. In general, we try and stay away from ground-mounted equipment just because of
vandalism.
That vandalism, and that seems to be the preference of the cities. It doesn't impede line of sight and things along that type of line. So in general, we found that putting them up a bit is a better type solution. But
I just wonder in this case, if you had it, kind of mounted mid-pole, it's pretty visible. If it's ground-mounted, at least in this case, it's kind of got the fence behind it. It's definitely not a visual impairment, and I think it would kind of, then you'd only have the wood pole with a shroud at the top, and you wouldn't have a bunch of, wouldn't seem as cluttered maybe. That's my only thought on that.
We were all for 5G. So, any more questions? Anyone want to make a motion? Are you willing to look at what Klaus suggested? You want to continue it to take a look at how to do that, or?
If necessary, we could certainly do that. It would be our intention to try and proceed if possible. But if the majority of the council, or the commission rather, feels that it would be in the best interest to make it ground mounted, and that's the best way to move forward, we could certainly look at that. I think there's a lot of cons generally with some of the ground mounted equipment, but I'm not necessarily, opposed to that.
I mean, I really appreciate you answering all of our questions.
Absolutely.
And I think that you've really answered to the best of your ability. I don't really see that there's that many things that are going to, in my opinion, are going to make that big of a difference. I mean, I hear AT&T saying they made an effort to locate it in a better position than they did, so I would be in favor of making a motion to approve, let the project go on.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Before you make a motion,
yeah.
can we ask that they maybe submit to staff
Right.
a clarification on the height?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Since it seemed like there was some uncertainty.
We will absolutely do that. Yes.
Correct the height, and I mean, if we were going to, I guess we're just going to take it that it's going to look like you said and be those dimensions. Are you? You've seen it? Have you seen them?
Actually,
We'll let the country boy assure us that it's going to be
I
just
have
like
not.
you told us. What?
I've not seen them yet because AT&T Mobility, it's a different department. So
Yeah.
I'm network design and they're wireless.
I see.
So they'll come out and do their magic. They just pay me to put the pole where they need them
Okay.
located
Okay.
to design.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve HBCA 18-00061 with the condition that the applicant submit detailed drawings with the correct height and measurements, and if possible, include a photograph of an existing one for our files.
Agreed.
So that when we see that we know it's going to be exactly like that.
Would you want to note any findings on the compatibility of the pole with the surrounding? I know that's one of the issues that
Yes.
comes up when we see these through Section 106 review is
With the specific findings that to say it a little different than's on here, that the proposed pole is in the best location, but with the findings that it's not the most appropriate for the installation of this kind of equipment due to its close proximity to the street and will be highly visible. Did I say that right?
sure that it's are you saying it's the best possible option,
It's the
although
best
it's not?
possible option. However, it is not the most appropriate location for the installation. So it's a unique circumstance in that there does not appear to be an alternate location for this particular pole in relationship to the entire project.
That sounds good. Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved by Joe Meacham and second by Klaus Ryman Phillip. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, you've been approved
Thank you.
with all that.
But
Thanks for
next
answering all our
time, if you're
questions.
going to have a project, you should start with the pole in the historic district and go from there.
I will come to you first.
Okay, next.
HPCA 18-65 at 2115 North Chartel, Mesta Park, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application of Edgardo Silds by Catherine Montgomery, AIA, of Preservation and Design Studio, PLLC, for certificate of appropriateness to 1, remove portion of concrete parking pad, elective. 2, remove portion of existing stockade fence, elective. 3, construct garage, elective. And 4, install concrete sidewalk and steps, elective. I wanted to note that the staff report mentions that we were needing dimensions for the steps, but I believe those have been provided. And then to note that I think we have a discrepancy in the documentation on the material of the garage doors, perhaps, so we might want to make sure that that's addressed.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm Edgardo Sil, the owner of this property.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'm here with my architect, Ms. Montgomery, Catherine Montgomery. I'm ready to answer any question.
Okay. All right.
The conditions that are recommended by staff, if this would be approved, would be that the garage siding be in planks rather than panels. And we had this at our places when we got here. Is that what you're submitting? I haven't had a chance to review this.
That's correct. If you look on page 3, it's a lap siding. That was
Okay.
an error
Okay.
Okay.
panel.
Good.
And then the other condition that the steps be and sidewalk be constructed in conjunction with the proposed garage, that's absolutely what's intended.
Catherine, excuse me. Ken also indicated that the discrepancy on the garage door from drawing to brochure is simply an error, and that the cut sheet would be what would be used rather than the steel doors.
Correct.
Thank you.
Oh, good. Okay.
I don't really have any, I mean, it seems like it matches the house. I think the materials are in compliance. It seems like staff noted that the existing drive is non-historic anyway, so seems pretty straightforward.
Okay. That's the beginning of a motion?
Right, I'll make a motion to approve HPCA 18-00065 with the item 1, 2, 3, and 4 with the specific findings of the staff and the conditions. On item 2, that the proposed steps and sidewalks will be constructed in conjunction with the proposed garage. And the garage siding will be consistent with this submittal, smooth fiber cement. Always in a condition.
That's not actually in the conditions, but correct.
And that the garage door will be wood, painted wood.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Klaus Ryman Philip, seconded by Joe Meacham. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, been approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
HPCA 18-70 at 2128 Northwest 29th Street, Shepherd, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application of Karen Garland for certificate of appropriateness to 1, add back door elective, 2, construct screen porch at rear of structure elective, and 3, modify window configuration at proposed door elective.
Okay, is the applicant present? Okay.
I will note while the applicant is signing in that we talked, I think, after the staff report had gone out about the windows to either side of the door, and I think the applicant's intent is that those will just be, the window will just be removed and siding will be installed
Right.
to cover the rest of that
I
opening.
brought copies. I'm Karen Garland. I brought copies of my emails with Catherine Friddle showing that we're doing away with the windows and there's also a picture there that just has the door. So I made copies of those emails and a new drawing showing the wall without the windows, which is what I wanted originally. The holdup was, I know the report says the house has vinyl siding. It doesn't. It has an old metal siding. And so it's not sold anymore. And I've been to a lot of building supply places, and they say no. And my contractor thought he might be able to find some scrap somewhere. But so when I first got Angela to help me, I said, well, maybe when we cut the door through that window, we can salvage some little scraps of the metal siding and use it to cover up the windows. And she said she didn't think I'd be very happy with the piecemeals. But then on my emails with Catherine, she said you can just use wood lap siding on that side. So I'm like, oh, okay, we'll just do that. So.
Okay. One thing we were talking about, the guidelines say that porches screens should be transparent. We were trying to figure out, it says it's a black charcoal finish, and which reduces glare, and on the back it has some ratings. Well, I can't read it. Is there a column for density? I mean, how transparent is the screen?
Well,
the idea is you can still see the house.
I went to the building supply places, and evidently there's basically two different kinds of screen. There's fiberglass and aluminum. And the fiberglass is more like a cloth-like thing and not as sturdy. And my contractor had said, be sure if you want it to last longer to get aluminum screening. And basically the aluminum, all the aluminum screening that I looked at either came in a silver or a charcoal, which is basically what I'm used to seeing on windows, just a dark colored screen. I thought the silver would be like glaringly unattractive.
But not the color so much as the openness, so you can see the house through the screen so it doesn't appear to be opaque.
Right.
That's the intent. Do you have any information on that screen?
I talked to my contractor, and I think that was in some of my
I mean, like I said, there is a chart that has a lot of information for a lot of different products, actually. And I just wondered...
Ellen, on there it does say, it appears that under daytime privacy it says fair. So if you use that as a guideline for how private it is.
Somewhat transparent.
Yeah, somewhat transparent.
Yeah, and also there's a column called density. And I don't know what that means exactly, but I think it says density.
I guess our question would be, it's much denser, though, than what we would, like a historic screening.
Yeah, and I'll use whatever you recommend.
Okay.
I just didn't know enough about screen stuff.
Well, we just know what the guidelines said. It'd be nice if it had a specification of some type, percentage of open.
My contractor, I asked him, I said, they need more specifications on the screen, and he said, tell them you're going to use a charcoal aluminum screen.
Well, there are more choices than that. But,
yeah.
And so...
On that same chart, the Ultra View, it says daytime privacy, it's not applicable. That would suggest to me that it's
none.
pretty transparent.
Yeah. That's why I saw that Ultra View, too. It has a light dot under density.
Right.
It seems to appear that that one is not very dense.
Okay.
But it'd be nice to have more information on that.
What I hear you saying, though, is when you go to the store, they don't have all of these. They just
Right.
have
Yeah.
the black charcoal
Right.
or the aluminum. Those
Right.
are your choices.
Yeah. I mean, I tried to look at them, and they could show me very few samples, so that's when I went to my contractor, because he told me, he said, or maybe it's Angela that said, all screens are not created equal. And
That sounds like Andrew.
so I went to the stores to look at it myself, and they basically could show me very few actual samples. So that's when I contacted my contractor, and I said they
Yeah.
need more information on precisely what screen we're going to use. And he said he would use this Pfeiffer brand, and he would use a Charco
Yeah.
aluminum screen. That's what he recommended. And anything more specific than that, I'm totally ignorant.
Yep.
But whatever you recommend, that's what screen I'll use.
Would you all feel comfortable getting a sample and letting Katie review it?
Since it's on, I would request a sample if it was on the front of the house, but since it's on the rear, I feel comfortable with
The
what
black.
they've selected.
Okay. Anybody else?
My thing.
Okay. Any other questions on this? Looks like you've tried to work through all these issues. Appreciate that. Any comments?
You say, what about complete documentation of windows? Did you get that?
So because the applicant indicated that they would just not, they would just do away with the windows and it will just be siding.
Okay.
That might need to be a condition of an approval, that verifying that it will be
There's an
siding, not
existing
windows.
really wide window, and then the door's going to be cut in the middle of that, so we either had to add siding and not have windows, or have the leftover pieces of that wide window. I didn't want windows at all because had several burglars and people break into my house in my life, and I don't want anything where anybody can look in or break in the door and open the door. And so I'm real security conscious, so I didn't want the windows to begin with, and then the siding issue come up.
Okay. So, are there two doors?
Just where that window is right up there, the door will be put in the middle of that.
Just like now.
So there'll be the door on the back of the
Okay.
house and then the door to the screen porch.
I don't currently
Or a
have
door
a back
on the
door
screen,
where
out
I
to the
can
backyard.
walk directly into my backyard, and I was kind of wondering.
Okay. I make a motion to approve HPCA 18-00070 with the findings included in the staff report and the okay, there's going to be a change, correct, of the wood siding? Does that need to be?
Could be with the condition that complete
Okay.
documentation of the
Okay.
installation of
There may
siding.
be wood siding underneath that metal siding. We don't know yet.
Right, you could keep that if that was, okay.
If that's the case, I'll just keep the
Right.
original wood siding.
With the condition that wood siding be used where required. Is that all we need?
Second.
Okay, moved by Joe Meacham, second by Suzanne Broadbent. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, been approved. Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question? On that house, if I hate metal siding. If there is wood siding underneath it, do I need to put in an application to take off the metal siding and just have the original wood siding?
You would need a CA to remove the metal siding and go back to the wood. That's something we could administratively approve, and we could possibly add it to this application.
Okay.
If you want to give us
I
a
don't know
call.
if I can afford to do that right now, just thinking in the future.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Hopefully. Thank you. All right.
HPCA 18-74 at 2110 North Walker Avenue, Jefferson Park, Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application of Eric Winger, City of Oklahoma City Public Works, by Scott Vo of Erickson for AT&T Mobility for certificate of appropriateness to 1, install 36-foot tall wood pole with 1-foot antenna and alley right-of-way.
I'm here. I am.
We need to talk to the applicant first. If you would sign in, please, and say your name.
Jason Constable for AT&T.
Okay.
This is another one of our 11 that we proposed with the city for a small cell placement. As you can see there, it is indicated that there is a new pole. That is where the small cell would go on. The design and the look and everything would be identical to the one that we just discussed. It is within the right-of-way. In fact, there are facilities on either side of it there as well. You'll see a number of electrical structures there, as well as a macro cell tower also. So there's a lot of wooden structures. There's a lot of utility-type work there, and we felt it was a reasonable location for the small cell placement. And I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Everything else is the same as the previous?
Everything else is the same, correct.
Okay, and I understand there's a adjoining property owner who would like to speak about this. Sorry, we guys just keep our order of this. So,
Okay.
Would you state your name and sign in, please?
You do have a letter from Mrs. Tran at your seat at the table as well.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, there it is.
I am Teresa Tran, aka Teresa Tran, and I am the owner of the land described as 2410 North Walker Avenue. We don't make any application to erect to the state project to install 36 tall wood poles with one antenna in the alley right-of-way, as in the state case number HPCA 180074. I don't allow anyone to use my property to build any kind of antenna. I would like this project to be rejected by the Oklahoma City or withdraw from any construction, any consideration at this time and any other time in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any comments on this and the comments from the property owner?
What is the process when utility companies put something on an easement that's part of your property?
So generally speaking, utility companies have the right to be in the city right-of-way. If the property owner disagrees with that, that could be potentially an issue between AT&T and the property owner if the property owner doesn't believe that they qualify as a utility, or if there's some sort of thing that she thinks her property rights are being infringed upon. But for the most part, the city right-of-way is for utilities, not just city utilities, but electric, telephone, those kinds of things.
So they're here before us at the Historic Preservation Commission. Are they getting a building permit, or how do they go about the process?
They're getting a revocable permit.
Does that revocable permit process include the owner of the property being notified?
No.
So the utility company just shows up on your property, or, without your knowledge, with approval of the city to do it?
Right.
Okay. That's the process. I didn't know, but now we do.
So we have determined that it is within the easement? We have that documentation now?
The site plan, the new version of the site plan that is at your seats that was submitted shows the pole in the public right-of-way within the alley that is a public alley. Now, I haven't gone out and measured in the field or anything like that, but it is indicated to be within the right-of-way.
1 foot 9 inches, plus or minus, according to A2, detailed site plan. So it looks like they're within their right to put a utility pole in the right-of-way. Is that on one?
If the property owner disagrees with that, then that would be a dispute between AT&T and the property owner. That would not be, the
Up to
city would
us,
not be
yeah.
a party to
So
that.
it's not part of the city or our approval or disapproval. We're just reviewing for historic preservation concerns. So she needs to talk to AT&T, work this?
Yeah, I don't know if the applicant has met with the property owner and if they've kind of tried to work through their concerns or not.
Could you speak to that, sir?
We have not. We got the notice of the complaint rather late. I did look through all of the information to see if there was a contact number, and I did not find a contact number to be able to contact her. But I certainly can leave my card with her, and
Okay.
will be made available to discuss any options or avenues or explain anything possible.
Okay. Great, thank you. So, the same issue as the last one, and is there a motion on this one? See anything? Matter of fact, it's less objectionable, so.
Well, it appears that it's probably in the location that AT&T needs, and it is within the easement. I don't know of any basis, really, to say no.
It's less visible than the previous
Yeah.
also, so.
Better.
So, a motion? Or-
Yeah.
Kate, is there any additional information you need?
No, I think the additional material that was provided covered everything that we had concerns about.
Very good.
So I'll move to approve HPCA 18-00074. Let's see, do we still need these specific findings? With specific findings 1 and 2, I don't believe we need number 3. You just said you had all the documentation that you were needing. Okay.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Suzanne Broadbent, second by Joe Meacham. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that one's approved.
Take the K for me.
Second?
Would you take the K? Would you take the K today?
I didn't hear what you said. Reject? No. We approved it in compliance with historic preservation issues, and you need to discuss your issues with AT&T, this gentleman here.
My name is Joseph Tran, so I would like to give my opinion.
Can we go ahead, or we've already voted? What do we do? Okay.
My name is Joseph Tran. I am her husband.
Okay.
Look on the area. There were a lot of pole, electric pole, everything there. You see, it's a lot of them. And that parking lot, which belongs to her, have a lot of abusing by AT&T. If you look closely, you see there's on page 2. Page 2, you see there was a square there, not a hole, digging by AT&T without our approval. They dig a big hole, about 10 square feet. They have a lid by metal put on top, and that right on the driveway, to drive out that way. So beside the car driving out, there's a lot of cars, but a parking lot for the commercial. It will be a restaurant.
You need to speak into the microphone.
I'm her husband.
Yeah.
So beside a lot of noise, the AT&T crew who come to do the maintenance, okay, they leave the metal cover up, and 90% of the time they never close. Okay, I one time hit the car right there at night, and you see it. And our customer make a lot of complaint. So if you post, when we call AT&T, they say they don't know who is that, who is the owner of that one. And they have a lot of gravel they put there. When they dig the hole, there are a lot of gravel. They never rebuild it. They never put concrete there. So all the grass, all the brush go up, and we have to take care many years. Every year we spend about $200 just for clean up this area. Just cut the posts and the tree and clean up there, and do all kind of stuff. So I would like to see that now the time, when we see the notice that there is some pole put right there, and actually they already put there before we even to approve anything. You didn't approve anything, they already have pole there. And we asked them, why you put on there? They said, well, that is the right of way. Okay, follow the DC here, there are no right of way. She didn't have any right of way for that one. There are no easement on that point. And the crew, I think the crew said, it's the easement, they get it. But that actually, they don't have it. So I would like the commission to look at very closely on the legal, when they want to apply for project, they say they are the owner. So I would like the commission look very close in legal property, okay, who the owner, before you approve anything. I would like it to be rejected. And everything contact with them will be later. We don't deal with it right now. Okay. Everything we want, if they want to talk with us, later, not now. So now we want it to be rejected, please.
Can you address the legal issues of the right-of-way?
Right, and so according to the site plans, this pole is within the right-of-way. And if you are having any kinds of problems with AT&T and with their activities in the right-of-way that's occurring on your property, then please talk to AT&T, and hopefully you guys can work something out.
See, bring a deed to her so you can want to look at the deed. The deed of the properties here. So
We're just reviewing the information that we've been given with compliance to the HP ordinance. We're not reviewing the right-of-ways.
The revocable permit process will confirm whether or not it's in the right-of-way.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Correct.
So they will look at all the legal descriptions, and they're kind of more qualified to assess that than the commission is.
They'll be looking at the placement of the pole and how it relates to other utilities that are within the right-of-way, whether or not they're city utilities or if they are other utility companies.
When the poles were placed, was there a building permit given and a review by the city? If you would, go to the microphone, please.
There's a permit that we require the contractor to file with the City of Oklahoma City in order to do any work in any of the easements.
Okay.
Do you know if that was, typically any of those kinds of permits come through the Historic Preservation Commission before they can be issued? Do you know in this particular case if that permit was issued?
I do not. I'm not the contract coordinator, but I could find an answer.
So you contract the placement of these poles?
Yes, contractors place our facilities.
So they would be responsible for any
Yeah, the contractor is responsible to file for that work zone permit, yes.
Well, if that was done, I have to say the city, I'm sure, reviewed it, but...
Because the process is if anybody gets a building permit in a historic district, it's automatically forwarded to you?
Yes,
Or
it comes.
It comes straight to the Historic Preservation Commission, that permit.
So the placement of the poles should have triggered the...
Right.
A work zone permit is different than a building
Oh,
permit.
I see.
Work zone permit.
Well,
They-
and
yes.
when the HP Commission approves something that then that still requires a revocable permit, that comes to staff for comment on there's kind of a checklist for revocables on different departments that it has to go through. So it might be possible to include at least, I mean, it kind of goes without saying, but perhaps the condition or the recommendation that the property ownership and location within the right-of-way be verified, through the revocable process to address the abutting property owner's concerns.
So we should amend our motion? How do we do that? I'm in favor of adding that requirement. I assume the city has reviewed it, but...
I guess I really don't understand on if they're giving a work permit, have they already approved the location?
So the work zone permit is for any kind of activity within the right-of-way that is not necessarily building.
So it's an after-the-fact approval?
The work zone permit?
No.
No.
The next step?
The revocable?
Revocable.
No. No, but this is an instance just like the other one where the pole was already in place before the revocable process was started.
So is that the way it's supposed to be?
No.
Okay. Okay, so when you're applying for a revocable permit, you're supposed to get the permit, you're supposed to do what first?
Typically, the process is that you would apply for the revocable permit. It then gets routed through the relevant departments and entities that need to approve it. Once all of those things have been approved and signed off, then you get your revocable permit and you can proceed with work. In this case, it appears that the poles themselves were installed before that process had been completed, even though the equipment has not been put on the poles.
So that goes back to the question, is there a work permit? Because if you were getting a work permit and you went to get it and they looked at it and said, you need a revocable whatever first, how does that work?
I'm not sure what information was provided at the time they got the work zone permit.
Do you have a comment?
Yeah, if I can try and clarify, Jason Constable with AT&T. When we first met with the city on small cells, the guideline that we got was, and that we agreed with, was AT&T's been around before statehood, and so we have a constitutional ability to be within the right-of-way. And so we didn't need to do any type of permitting or anything like that. We could just deploy within the right-of-way as we always did, which is the impression that we were under when we set these poles. Later, we had a meeting with the city. We were working on legislation to facilitate small cell deployment, which passed. We compromised and we agreed with the city that we would voluntarily follow the revocable permit process for these pending the outcome of the legislation, which did pass and is effective November 1st. So if you're wondering why the poles are already there, it's because at the time the poles were set, we were under the impression that the city and we were following our constitutional ability to be within the right-of-way. We visited with the city. We want to be good actors. We want to do everything correct. And so later on in a meeting, we, again, voluntarily agreed to do the revocable permit process. So that's why things are a little kludgy on this. And so I just do want to apologize for that and kind of explain that, and if that kind of helps with some of the understanding. As I could best understand Joseph's comments, the issue there was with there is a handheld that's already in the ground, not associated with the small cell project whatsoever. It is in the ground and provides fiber to the adjacent macro cell tower that's there. I believe his complaint is that is sometimes left open, and I will address that with our network team and make certain that that is closed to better facilitate the use of the parking lot, and certainly we'll get with him too to see what other types of issues that there may be. And I apologize, I may have missed some of the concerns in there too, but that was the one that I understood, and so we'll certainly discuss that with the network team to make sure that manhole is closed when not in use.
Okay, so you'll work with them on their issues.
No, we want it to be rejected. Okay? We don't want it to talk after the fact.
Step up to the microphone, would you please, sir? Microphone.
We would like it to be rejected. The project to be rejected. We would like it to be rejected. I would like Oklahoma City reject the project. reject it, don't approve it.
Well, wait a minute.
I don't want you to approve it, that they talk to us. They had talked to us first, so let them, please, do not approve it. They have to talk to us first, and they had to redo the project.
Well,
because they didn't stand on they're not owner. They cannot use our property to do stuff as they want.
apparently they're in their right to place the work on the utility easement, and we're reviewing it for historic preservation issues. So we're asking you to work with the representative from AT&T on, we've already approved from an HP guideline.
We still want it to be not approved.
There are several other steps to the process for the city of Oklahoma City to approve it. So if you all can call me tomorrow, I can get you in touch with the appropriate staff that take this through the rest of the process for it to actually be approved. We're kind of just step one in several steps for the revocable permit to be issued. And I think there are other city departments that are more qualified to address whether or not they're within the public right-of-way or whether or not they're on your property. That's not really something that the commission is qualified to assess. And I know you have your deeds, but I'm just saying the commission doesn't have the ability here to read that and to interpret that in relation to what they've proposed.
Follow the letter we received. There are several things we really see. There was something which we not agree. First of all, they said the owner, okay, the owner applied for that. We are owner, we don't apply. Secondly, there was no map to see where is it. We spent a lot of time figuring out where is it. So something wrong with the project. We strongly request it to be rejected. Okay, don't approve it.
Well, we're just, as Katie said, we're just the first step, historic preservation. So if you will talk to Katie tomorrow, call her, she will help you address your issues with other departments. So if you will call her, again, get in touch tomorrow.
But I don't want you to approve it today.
They've already done it.
The commission already, they made a motion and voted to approve it from the standpoint of the HP commission.
But
That
they
already.
don't know whose name, they don't know the owner name, why you approve for. It's not right to do it.
It meets the historic preservation guidelines.
Apply for.
It meets the historic preservation guidelines.
We don't apply for this one.
Well,
we don't want it to be approved. That one say the owner.
Appreciate your
but
concern.
we're the owner. We don't
Get
apply
in touch
for.
tomorrow and talk to the other city officials. We're just reviewing for historic preservation issues only.
Yep. If you'll give me a call tomorrow, we'll discuss your options and the rest of the city process.
We
But
appreciate
at this
your
point, the commission has approved
concern.
it for the certificate of appropriateness component.
We want to approve it, okay? If they want to discuss anything, okay, will be a new project, not this one, please.
Well, thank you for coming and your time. If you'll get in touch, try to work it out tomorrow, later date.
So today I want to reject it, and they want to talk anything, they not to talk
We've already voted,
Then
ma'am.
you do it again.
We've already voted, ma'am.
Do it before they
I
talk
wanted to
anything to us. I don't want to reject it for me today.
We've already voted, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do they have a normal right of appeal through HP?
Well, there's the Board of
Is that what
Appeal,
you would
yeah.
discuss with them?
That's the next major step, but there's also reviews by the city departments that, okay, next.
HPCA 18-79 at 1008 Northwest 18th Street, Mesta Park Ward 6. Consideration of possible action on application of Miles Mixon, Revive Design and Build by Catherine Montgomery of Preservation and Design Studio for certificate of appropriateness to 1, demolish garage, elective, 2, replace wood siding, required, 3, replace brick columns, required, 4, replace front walkway, elective, 5, construct garage, elective, and 6, replace wood fence, elective.
Okay.
Miles Mixon, I'm the property owner at 1008 Northwest 18th.
All right.
And I'm Ken Honchman with Preservation and Design Studios, 616 Northwest 21st Street. And we can answer any questions you guys have for us, hopefully.
Ken, could you just discuss the condition of the garage and the reason for the new garage?
Well, we've provided a handout. Number one, the garage tips about 10 degrees outside of plumb. The foundation and the slab of the garage have separated and cracked and are heaving. The base plates for the walls are at grade and have disintegrated in many places. So in the process of doing anything to revitalize the garage, we'd probably have to take the garage down. And I'd say over 50% of the material would have to be tossed because it is rotted.
And the size of the garage in relationship to the existing is, the size of the new garage?
It goes from a 1-car to a 2-car. So it'd be the 450 square feet allowed.
And the staff had questions about replacing the front walkway?
Yes, and you can see from the staff photographs, the walkway is cracked, that it has many large places where the concrete has eroded away. It is uneven, and it looks like, thinking of a different project now.
Would it be put back in the exact same place?
Yes, we are proposing to put it back exactly in the same configuration.
I forgot to ask about the garage, the height comparison?
The garage, we kept the roof at the same pitch, so when you widen the garage, the height goes up by about 1'9".
Looks pretty good.
I make a motion to approve HPCA 18-00079 with, let's see, how do this? To approve. Item 2 with the specific findings as noted by staff. Can I list them like that, Katie?
Yes. We usually do a separate motion for the demolition of the garage,
okay. Right.
But you can combine the other ones.
Okay. Item 2, the specific findings as noted by staff. Item 3, with the specific finding as noted by staff and the condition for appropriate mortar. Item 6, with the specific findings and the conditions that are noted by staff. Number 5, with the specific findings that the documentation of the sidewalk condition was presented by the owner and it cannot be retained or preserved, and that the new paving will match. And item 5, construct the garage with the specific findings as noted by the staff in the staff report. So that would be all items except for item 1.
Okay.
Second.
Moved by Joe Meacham and seconded by Suzanne Broadbent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, 2 through 6 been approved.
Make a motion to approve item 1 of HPCA 18-00079 for the demolition of the garage with the specific, with a specific finding that the applicant has presented sufficient evidence to show that the garage is a threat to safety. I don't know, public health. And have established the condition of the garage is such that it's impractical to rehabilitate.
Second.
Okay, it's moved by Joe Meacham, seconded by Suzanne Broadbent. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, approved. Thank you.
I'm just going to stay here.
So, HPCA 18-80 at 507 Northwest 24th Street. I believe we have a commission member who has to abstain on this case, which means we will not have a quorum. So I'm afraid this one will have to be moved to the June 29th hearing date.
There's nothing I can do about that.
So, yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, HPCA 18-82 at 809 Northwest 20th Street, Mesta Park, Ward 6, consideration and possible action on application of Cheryl Bennett for certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace and reconfigure rear addition with exterior stair elective, 2, enclosed cellar door elective, and 3, replace and reconfigure doors elective.
Is the applicant present? Okay. You come up and sign in, please. State your name, where you live.
Cheryl Bennett, and the property is 809 Northwest 20th.
Okay.
I looked at your project, and it looks, as far as the design, it seemed pretty clear, but my question is, are you removing any historic siding?
Siding? Well, as far as I know, it's not historic. There's going to be, they put the siding around, well, let's see.
I guess that's what I'm...
The addition under the stairs, the siding is, I'm going to take that out with your approval because it just floods the room underneath. But the siding is up against the stairs. So when I remove the stairs, it's going to, you know, have, those will need to be replaced.
So, because you have some smart sidings on your application.
Right.
Is it going to be on the historic building?
It will be on the addition. It's not going to affect...
It'll be on the addition.
Right.
And how would you describe the addition? Is it just an open staircase?
The addition was what you saw. There's a balcony at the top. Underneath is a laundry room. Somebody added, I don't think it was anywhere close to original, that portion under the stairs. And stairs just don't make a roof. You know, that leaks constantly. As well as the upper part of the balcony, which I discovered when I was trying to do some repairs, is basically wood, and then underneath it is the plaster. There's no decking to it at all. So it leaks continually, and it needs to, it's over the structure. The laundry room is actually over the basement, so it's actually affecting the foundation as well. I need to to get that stuff.
It was just kind of hard so I guess that's where I'm unclear. Then what would you say that so is the smart siding going to go on the exterior of the laundry room?
Yes, it's going to be on the front part of the laundry room after that front portion is removed. Because like I said, there's really not any other option. The staircase is,
Yeah, I think I understand your problems and everything. I just want to, my questions are directly my question is there any historic siding that you are removing and replacing with smart siding? If so, then we would ask that you put, you know, a wood siding instead of the smart siding.
The redwood siding, which is presently on the building. That would be
That's kind of where, you know, that's the confusing part on here. It's just hard to tell what you're taking off and putting on. There's not very much of it, and so, I mean...
There's not very much of it. You have to buy the redwood siding in lots, the places that I've checked, so I would get like 5 or 6 times as much as I need.
Right.
But I might be able to sell it on a newsletter or something like that. I mean, if that's the only way that I can get this done.
And that was just my, after trying to figure it out, that would be my only question. If it was actually on an addition that was not original, then that was, I'm not saying...
It doesn't, you know, honestly, I don't have any old pictures. I actually did try to find some. I don't think that it's original. Most of the people that have come out and looked at it have said that they thought it was built in the 70s. It does have a redwood siding on the outside of it. The smart siding to me looks pretty much the same. I don't think
it does, but we only, I mean, we've allowed it in the past, but we've limited it to garages or to new addition, to an addition that is clearly an addition and not historic.
So the Sanborn maps as late as 1955 show this as a two-story, show a two-story porch, open porch on the rear of the structure in approximately the footprint of what is now shown as enclosed. If you look on pages 3, 4, 5, and 6 of the staff report, it was addressed as 811, and then eventually it changes to 811, 809. So that shows a two-story covered porch off of the back.
So it wasn't even an enclosure.
So that would suggest that it was enclosed sometime after 1955.
Yeah, it doesn't particularly look original to me. But, you know, yeah, that would be really my only problem with going back to the redwood siding is that, well, it's not green, you know. I lived in California. I like redwoods.
I know. I'm having a hard time actually figuring out the whole thing.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Is there anything I could explain? I'm having, now that I have the picture in front of me, it helps me.
A plan would be good for me. I'm an architect. I like to see plans.
Plans, well, you know, it is just basically a rectangle. I mean, I submitted are you talking about the basic floor plan of it, or?
Yeah, I've been trying to relate it's a lot of different elements to a plan, and the door locations.
Well, it's really not going to look that much different as far as, I mean, basically I'm proposing to rebuild the stairs. The only thing is that I would take out that front portion of the laundry room, but basically that's going to stay the same. So it's not going to, there is going to be, I requested that I enclose the cellar door because the pipes keep freezing and the water keeps going down into the area, and that causes a problem. So I want to be able to enclose that. The upper balcony has solid walls about this, there we go, which of course with so many properties in this area, the floor slants down towards the front. Like I said, there's no decking underneath it, and the boards are rotting out towards the front, so I would like to put rails there as well so that the water would actually have somewhere to go other than down or away from the decking plans.
When you say enclose the laundry room door, what does that?
Well, basically after the front porch part out under the stairs is taken out, it's going to need to, right now it's open inside. So under the stairs, it's a rectangle, and then the portion under the stairs is also a part of the laundry room. So after that front part of the laundry room is taken out, then that would need to be sided over and the door installed on the back wall. I mean, it's obviously been an addition because there's you can see part of the wall there, and they just took it out to, I guess, increase the square footage for.
Does one of the drawings show the door that you're speaking about? One of your drawings?
I included it in the information that I sent.
You've got looking at the back, and then you've got looking.
Oh, you mean as far as the door to the laundry room?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Is it in one of the drawings?
Let's see.
Sorry, I just can't figure it out.
What? Yeah.
I have difficulty figuring it's like, it's a very complicated structure to me. I'd like to see a plan.
Well,
something.
it's not as easy as some of the garage things and stuff,
Yep.
I understand, but.
I mean, almost all of it is when you look at it, it matches up.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. I mean.
With what she's got. There's really not that much different.
No, other than taking out the front porch, and then instead of having the rail or the solid walls on the balcony, have railings instead. Other than that, it's basically the same thing. It just is taking out that front porch so that it doesn't leak. And
when you compare it to your drawing, okay, so just for clarification, you might have to have another drawing, but if you look at the top, you go up, you show it. This is kind of confusing. If you're going up to the third floor and you get off of the staircase, okay, and then so there's a balcony there,
right.
And you're taking that all the way across this time. The one up, the current one.
Well, you would come up to the front deck, then you'd walk in through where the door is presently, and it would be just railings along the sides. There is a bit of overhang there, but it's, if I understood your question, I'm not planning on expanding the deck out.
You need more drawings, Alan?
No, like I said, I just cannot figure out exactly what's going on here.
It appears that you're doing almost an exact replacement. Is there anything that's getting smaller or bigger as far as stairs or?
The room under the stair, or that little addition under the stairs, that would be gone. And then the top porch is going to be rails instead of solid wall.
It's going to be what?
Rails.
Rails.
Yeah.
Well, without all the drawings, that confusing to me. Just the verbal explanation makes more sense, actually.
Yeah.
It
is going to be.
Klaus, you have any comments? Or you?
No, I'm honestly kind of with you. It's really kind of difficult to look at these drawings and figure out what's going on. I mean, it seems like, if you kind of hold it up like this.
Right. When you look at it like that, I think it looks like it's almost an exact replica of what's there,
Well,
with the addition of some rails.
If you look at this photograph, you can.
This just has measurements and stuff, that's all.
So maybe we're just being confused by the drawings.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the photographs.
I have a question about the door. So you said you're going to remove the door and enclose that?
On the upstairs balcony or?
On that basement?
On the downstairs, the door is out on the portion under the stairs, so that's going to be gone, and then there's going to be a door on the new facing, which is basically the rectangle laundry room.
That's the confusing part.
Well, I mean, it's just a rectangle, and then there's this part under the stairs. It's, pretty.
So basically, where there's like a piece of, I don't know, some kind of plywood or something laying on the ground in front of that existing window or door, so it'll be right there, yeah, okay.
Okay, now that's the part where it would.
Okay.
That's the basement.
So instead of having the door half, it's going to be a whole door right there. You'll walk off of the ground into a door.
Right, into the basement?
Yes.
Yes.
And that was kind of my...
Are there, that piece of plywood, whatever that is, that's just a cover?
Yeah, that's...
There are steps going down the basement,
correct?
That's
and
just a piece of plywood
lip
laying there. So you go down some steps, and there'll be a full-size door going into the basement.
But in the drawing, you have the full-size...
No, it would be enclosed. I would take do some siding around the sides of that, have a door in the front. There is a cement lip in the front, right down through there. But, yeah, it needs to be enclosed because the water and leaves and everything collects down there.
Are you going to be able to walk down the stairs to the basement?
Yes. There'll be a door in front, sure. I mean...
that is essentially a big difference.
It's basically a new little room.
It's what?
Just a tiny little room to enclose that door at grade. When you open the exterior door, you immediately go down the steps towards the existing basement door and then enter the basement.
So essentially, if the structure remained the same, you'd have a wall where those two columns are holding up that landing above.
Yes, and on the side of it as well.
So it's actually coming out?
Yes.
Okay.
So that makes sense. That's kind of the part she's enclosing. So you're actually adding, I guess, what differs from your proposal versus what's existing, that portion would be enclosed.
Yes, that's going to have an addition over that door.
So if you look at the next drawing...
And that little room is going to be taken out.
Then this comes out and that door goes there. Is that correct? This comes out and then the door goes there? Okay. It comes out under the stairs. Okay.
This is probably where it's kind of nice to have the existing and a proposed plan, but I presume that the footprint of the new stairs and enclosure is all the same as the existing.
Yes. It will be the same.
Well, except for that new little room in front of the basement door.
Right.
Yeah.
That room will be added, and the one going into the laundry room will be, the front part under the stairs will be taken off.
And above that new basement door, that little room, there will be a little bit of a balcony. I see a railing right there next to the steps. There will be a little bit of a balcony.
The balcony will stay there. There will be a slanted roof over the top of the new addition with TPO as a water membrane to protect it from the weather.
Essentially from this view, basically, where those trash cans are, and then to the right of the stairs on the ground, that would all be sided or enclosed.
Yes.
The landing would stay pretty much the same. That would be open, correct?
Pretty much the same, yeah. I mean, it'll just not leak as bad and not freeze as bad, I'm hoping, so.
Well, I think it makes sense to close that basement door because it does seem like it's kind of recessed, and I could definitely imagine.
Water catcher.
Yeah, water kind of pouring in.
Oh, it does, yeah. And it isn't helping the cement basement either, for that matter. There's some cement repairs that I'm going to need to do down
There was another question by staff about the railings.
Yes.
And I saw the one that you proposed kind of looks like an interior kind of.
It was, the top railing was for outside decks, so. But I can use 2x4s if the same as what's there right now. That would be fine too.
Katie? Did you all have an issue with that?
Angela worked this one a little more carefully than, closer than I did.
Angela, the railing?
Yes, ma'am, I'm taking a quick peek. My question's about the railing. One is that 42 inches high is not typical, but it is in fact existing, we believe.
It's what?
Existing.
Existing.
That's what it is now. So, yeah.
Okay.
And then the other is I'm not absolutely certain based on the drawing as to whether or not the railing at the stairs differs from the railing at the balcony as proposed. I believe the balcony railing is in fact a wall, just like it is currently built. Is that accurate, ma'am?
I was planning on putting railings up there rather than walls. Is that what you were asking?
Oh.
Right, yes. It's railings.
It's railings, and in the information you turned in, they were 2x2 railings. They don't
Correct.
look, but
Yes.
they're not drawn
that's
like that,
basically-
but that was-
Basically what you see most of the time in decking, just the 2x2 posts with 2x4. The posts are, well, yeah, that was difficult to do in Excel, but they're all 2x2s. Sure.
okay, all the railings are 2x2.
Yeah. I would try to keep everything consistent on that.
On the railing, I think that it would be more typical to do maybe a square, a flat piece, and you might turn that, you might work with Angela to get the detail for the railing,
Okay.
and we could put that as a condition.
I would be happy to do that. I'd be happy to do almost anything at this point. I really need to get this done.
Appreciate that.
Any?
So is everybody, any more
Well,
questions?
there was also something in the staff specific findings about not being clear what level dot it, what capacity that would be used.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
The level dot IT, that was in the staff findings, that it was not clear what capacity in which that would be utilized in support of the structure, and I'm not sure it's a problem for us, but does it show? Does it?
Those are just, what do you call those?
Oh, those little.
They look like jacks,
Those
actually.
little feet.
but,
They're
yeah.
just,
Helps level ground.
Right.
But so why, are they they're part of the construction? Do they show? What's the concern?
because you are getting a building permit and it will be inspected.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
So you're not planning on sitting this on the ground, it'll be in a foundation.
Say again.
It'll be in a concrete foundation, not just sitting on the ground. Those are intended for something sitting on the ground, I think. How are you structuring this?
I believe he's accurate, that when you apply for your building permit for this, that they're not going to allow you to utilize just the levelets for the footing for your
have to have a
structure. I
footing.
think you're going to have a stem or something.
That's fine.
You have to have a concrete footing
Right.
for each post.
Yes, I actually am aware of that. I've done some research
Okay.
on that, and I agree.
Spending a lot of time on this one. Anybody? More questions? You understand it now?
Unless somebody has something they want to add to, findings or the conditions, I guess those will be conditions. I would make a motion to approve HPCA 18-00082 with the following conditions. One, that the railings, that the 2x2 railings and their handrails are, that you do detailed drawings are turned into staff.
Okay.
That's one.
Sure.
That the structure will need concrete foundation.
Sure.
And is there anything else staff would like turned in?
You know, I think when she goes to get a building permit, they are going to want to see a floor plan. So we probably need a floor plan submitted.
I actually have made floor plans. I'm sorry. I thought that you guys were more interested in the external structure.
It does help to understand the relationship
I
of everything.
apologize.
And I think I missed that we didn't have one, so.
Yeah, no, I have detailed floor plans already, so that's not a problem.
Okay, good. And
I
then,
just, like I said, I just thought you guys were interested.
Then floor plans will be included. So there's going to be details of the railing with the handrail, that there will be concrete footings, and that floor plans will be turned in and to be approved by staff. So if they need you to clear up any information, then
I'd be delighted to work with them. They're very pleasant.
y'all can work that out. Okay?
Second.
Okay. Moved by Joe Meacham and seconded by Klaus Ryman Phillips.
Suzanne.
What's that?
I have a deep voice.
Oh, I thought it was Klaus. I'm sorry. It's seconded by Suzanne Broadbent. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, you've been approved with conditions.
Thank
I
you.
just saw it came from the right side. I guess I heard it on my ear. Getting hard of hearing. Sorry about that.
Okay.
All right, next.
HPCA 18-00083 at 2209 Northwest 25th Street, Shepherd Ward 2. Consideration and possible action on application of Danielle Johnson for certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace dormers elective, 2, replace dormer vent with windows elective, 3, replace metal vent with wood louvered vents elective, 4, replace chain link fence with wood fence elective, and 5, install driveway gate elective. I believe the staff report noted a condition about providing additional site plans with the location of the fence and gate, and we do actually have that, I believe.
In our packet?
Yes, I believe it's in at the tail end of your staff report, actually.
Oh, okay. All right. So you are the applicant.
I am. I'm the owner.
Danielle?
Yes, Danielle Johnson.
Did you sign in too?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. All right. Those the dormers, those are vents in the dormers? It just looks solid to me.
Yeah, so right now it's vinyl coated metals, just venting that's been placed there just to enclose the opening, and it's hail damaged.
It is a vent? It looks just like siding?
It is. It's perforated.
It's what?
It's perforated, so it has
Perforated,
little tiny holes in it.
I don't imagine that vents very well, but...
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
It's not weatherproof either.
Okay, I see it on that one page 15, a little better photograph. Okay.
Well, I do just have a question about replacing the vents with a window. I mean, I understand it's going to be operable, but whether it will be or not, whether it ever will be opened, I don't know. And my question goes to, you're changing the ventilation in the attic by putting in the windows instead of those vents. I agree the vents aren't attractive and all that sort of thing, but ventilation is important.
Yes.
So have you talked with your contractor about making up for that? Does it need to be made up for? What?
Yes, so actually there's on the side of this house, so on this side of the house, there's another vent that we're going to be replacing right there.
Right there?
We're going to be replacing what's currently there with a screen that will be covered by wood, so it will actually allow for better venting of the attic than the materials that are currently there. So that will be part of what makes up for that venting. And the windows that we are proposing to use on the front of the home will be operable. So if necessary, we can go up there and open and close them if we need to. But other than that, there's no additional plans to add venting.
Yeah, I understand, and I just don't know whether that's going to be sufficient venting or not. And just bringing it to your attention, it's not something that, we necessarily pay a lot of attention to, but as a homeowner, you need to.
Right.
And it does go to protecting your roof and that sort of thing, so.
Yes. Well, I'll speak to my contractor about that to make sure that we've accounted for that.
So you're proposing replacing the dormers in the same place?
Yes, they will be the same specs. The only change that we would make would be to accommodate the window that was included in your packet. I believe that the current height of the opening is somewhere between 27 and 29 inches, and we're proposing that that would be open to 32 inches to allow for the installment of a window instead. But all of the height and depth and all of that would be the same.
And the attic's not occupied, it's just
open space.
It's just appearance.
Katie, it seems to me on the new fence drawings, do those meet kind of the historic preservation guidelines as submitted?
The wood fence?
Yes, that's one of the many typical fences that we see, just a standard wood fence.
And I included a picture of a photograph of a neighbor's fencing that we would be emulating. You can see a portion of it, so it would be the panels that I submitted that we would be using, but then we would place a top trim piece. There would be a square trim piece that would be in line with the photograph of the sample fence that one of our neighbors has currently.
Yep, that's allowed.
Okay.
And the metal fence?
Metal fence would be in line with some of the other homes that have electric gates within our neighborhood. So I'm proposing that we be allowed to place that across our driveway. It would just be a black, about a 4-foot tall fence that would just run the length of our driveway, just to provide more security.
Did you turn in drawings for that or specifications?
I included a couple of pictures, or at least one photo of a neighbor's
I have that.
fence.
Could you, if you could submit drawings for that part?
Yep. If approved, that could be a condition of the approval that you submit a specific drawing of this is the gate, this is the fence.
Okay.
To staff.
Is that that's the only thing that needs to be submitted for drawings is the
I think so.
fence? Is the fence, the location of the fence is fine, 33 feet back? Is that what you measured?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Okay, I would make a motion to approve HPCA 18-00083 with the following condition that that drawings and/or specifications for the wrought iron fence be submitted to staff for approval.
Okay, I can do that. Thank you.
Okay.
And with all the other specific findings and unique circumstances noted by staff.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Moved by Joe Meacham and seconded by Klaus Ryman Philip. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So that's the last of the individual cases. On to other business. A.
All right, at long last, PC 10529 at 2609 North Martin Luther King Avenue, C3 Ward 7. Consideration and possible action on a recommendation to rezone and designate the Freedom Center as a historic landmark, HL overlay, and to adopt the resolution hopefully included as part of your, staff report. The commission has the ability to initiate and to recommend the designation of individual sites as well as districts as historic landmarks. That recommendation is forwarded on to the Planning Commission and then on to City Council as per the actual the rezoning process. So if this is forwarded on and ultimately approved, then the HL overlay zoning designation would be applied in addition to the current C3 zoning that the property has. The designation the process of designating the Freedom Center was initiated, was first considered in December, and then the process was initiated in February. When we consider designation of a property as a landmark, we have to look at the Commission's designation criteria, and the staff report identifies several that the property appears to meet. The first is under the historical cultural category, such as significant character, interest, or value as part of the development, heritage, or cultural characteristics of the locality, state, or nation, or is associated with the life of a personality significant to the past. The Freedom Center is both associated with the significant character, interest, and value of the heritage of Oklahoma City through its important role in the history of the civil rights movement in Oklahoma City. The building was acquired by Freedom Center Incorporated, which kind of branched out of the Oklahoma City's NAACP Youth Council in 1967. It was originally built as a mobile gas station, but was turned into the Freedom Center Incorporated's headquarters, from which innumerable civil rights efforts and activities were launched, marches for a number of different important issues, as well as meetings for civil rights activists, community activities engagements, outreach to just the community in general, educational programming and services provided. The facility is also importantly associated with the life of Clara Luper as a significant individual in Oklahoma City's past, who was a truly defining person in the civil rights movement in Oklahoma City, going back to the sit-in movement in 1958, where Oklahoma City was one of the first, was the location of some of the first sit-ins in the country, and her leadership that continued through civil rights activism, community activism, through the rest of her life. The Freedom Center is also, we felt, was also associated with a specific historic event that had a significant effect upon the development, heritage, or cultural characteristics of the locality, state, or nation. Just a little over a year after the Freedom Center was opened as the headquarters, it was firebombed. The Freedom Center rebuilt and rebuilt again, and for decades was fundraising and advocating for the reconstruction of the facility. It garnered national attention. It garnered a lot of attention from state leaders, and really kind of, to me, I think we don't hear as much about the civil rights movement in Oklahoma as we do in other parts of the country, and in particular, we don't hear about violence in the civil rights movement in Oklahoma. It kind of feels like, well, that was somewhere else. That wasn't here. And all of the stories and coverage of that at the time really highlights how important this was in Oklahoma City as well, and what a huge movement it was for people to engage in the civil rights movement, and the risk that they were truly taking here in Oklahoma City. So I've kind of whizzed through that because we've had a long meeting, and I know people have been patiently waiting. I think we also have some people who might want to say a few words, but in short, staff felt that the property met the applicable criteria for designation as a historic landmark, and would open it up for questions from the commission. there's anything you have to ask of staff.
Good job, I think. Okay, any questions for Katie, or motion for approval, or comments from the audience? Citizens?
Oh, and as Commissioner Johnson approaches, you do have an email from her office today noting that, I'm sorry.
No.
Oh, that,
That's not Will.
Oh, that's not Will. I'm so sorry. We have an email from Willa Johnson's office noting that she was appointed as a receiver for the property and that she supports the designation as a historic landmark.
Good.
So.
Knew she would. Okay, this, you
Good
are?
evening. My name is Marilyn Looper Hildreth.
Okay.
I am the daughter of Clara Looper and one of the original sit-inners here in Oklahoma City. I heard you talking about the violence in all over the country and the violence, no violence here. It's because the city of Oklahoma City worked together. Blacks, whites, everybody made sure that we didn't want the type of violence that had occurred everywhere else. My mother was a dreamer. She felt that all people were created in God's glory. She believed that every child could learn. She taught school for over 40 years, and all the programs that she had was basically geared to young people. The city movement started here in Oklahoma City in 1958 with 13 young people. 13. And that changed the course of American history. Because when we sat down here in Oklahoma City, it was like a wildfire that was spinning across this country. So we represented the change, and when you go to a lot of the museums here in America now, you see Oklahoma City and the contributions that we made in changing history. And the pages of history are filled with the lives of great men and women who, by their sacrificial lives, changed the course of history. And my mom was one of those people. And I'm here today to say thank you. Freedom Center should be a historical site. She was ill for a long period of time. She was sick, my brother's sick, and her husband was sick. And I took care of all of them. And then I got sick. But I'm back again, thank the Lord. And I think that Oklahoma should celebrate our own. A writer once wrote, one day somebody's going to write about me. One day somebody's going to talk about me. I guess it's going to be me myself. And it's time for us in Oklahoma to celebrate our history because we represent change. Our police department, you saw no beating and stomping on people here in Oklahoma. And during the Civil Rights Movement, we had more segregated laws than any state in America. But we were able to overcome that because of the great people in the state of Oklahoma. So I just want to say thank you. I look forward to seeing Freedom Center as a historical site. And we have a lot of good people that have worked and sold pickles and lollipops. We didn't have any money. And it's a good thing some of them didn't, sometimes they didn't serve us because we couldn't have paid for it anyway. And but we were able to maintain Freedom Center, not by the wealthy, but by the common, everyday people who worked and cleaned toilets in Nichols Hills, who made sacrifice for the young people to go downtown and sit in. And for those young people that have been able to come through Freedom Center and receive the type of education and the travel that Freedom Center presented, those that are your professionals here in Oklahoma now, I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for including us in a part of history that will not be changed. Whether we celebrate it or not, we have made a contribution to America.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments.
My name is Bruce Fisher. I'm a retired curator of the African American projects at the Oklahoma Historical Society. I did the exhibits that are on display there. My mother is Ada Lois Sylvia Fisher, first African American to be admitted to the University of Oklahoma School of Law. And this year is an important year because it's the 60th anniversary of the sit-in movement that began in 1958. I've got many friends that have gone to the Smithsonian New African American exhibit, and Oklahoma City is not represented there. So we hope this year to put together a series of events and inviting the Smithsonian and the NAACP leadership to come and recognize Oklahoma City for the contributions it made to the sit-in movement. We were not the largest, but we were the first. And we don't intend to diminish anything from the 1960 civil rights movement, but we want to tell the truth. And the truth is it started right here in Oklahoma City. And so we're looking forward to working. Oklahoma has precious few, too little landmarks that represent the contribution of African Americans to the growth and development of this nation. And this is an important one. And we look forward to working with all shareholders to make this this year an important year on the calendar of the civil rights movement in Oklahoma. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Okay.
Yes, well, Lesnar, I know I'm surprised you haven't seen me before. Again, thank you. Michael Washington, 2900 Northeast 18th Street. This is actually a tremendous, exciting moment for me, first of all, because we know that Clara Luper represented the strength and willpower where men in the state of Oklahoma didn't. Here it was, we had a lady, a courageous lady, black woman, took 13 young children with her and said, look here, young, we're going to do something about the segregation here in Oklahoma. But it came, this lady back here didn't mention it, but it came up on a suggestion by her. Hey, mama, let's go buy some hamburger and get some pops, Coke down there at the Cat's drugstore. After they had gone to an actual meeting place where they did a play up in, I think it was New York. Well, it was, the children got to complain and said, Mama, we can buy gas with whites, we can eat with whites, we can play with kids with whites. We can't do it in Oklahoma. So what we're going to need to do then is go back and say, we're tired of enough is enough, because they saw a diverse culture of people on the north doing a great thing, but in the south, you here, I'm here, and they here. Well, again, I'm not going to hold you up because y'all been here long, but I do want to say this here. The Freedom Center represents more than just the Freedom Center. Listen to the name by itself, freedom. Freedom, your mind. And this is the concept by which Mother Clara Luper, I can call her mother because I used to get run away from the house if she don't know this. But yeah, she used to run me down the street when I was bad, real little. But anyhow, freedom means freedom of your mind. And you want to know what? She was a very beautiful lady who did not discriminate, who did not say her kids are better than yours. She opened her arms, as everybody know. Everybody was her family. And this is a great monument and a great thing, a great institution. It would be a great thing for this Freedom Center to be recognized as a lady who brought kids off the streets and put them into that Freedom Center and say, look here, you're going to learn this, or you're not going to get the cookies I baked, or the candy I made, or had others bring to us. In other words, you had to have a certain status. You didn't just come in and say, oh, I'm Clara Luper, I'm gone. No. You had to come in and learn. You know, you read books. And I want to say this here again as one of the very freedom fighters here in Northeast Oklahoma City, a political activist, community activist. My whole thing is in wanting the Freedom Center to be open, let me close this, is that it be represented as a great thing, so when tourists come in, they can say, well, hey, here's the spot where Clara Luper got together with those 13 youths and said, we're going downtown, and now we're going to open this back up and let all these people come in and see the great monuments, the great civilizations. And you ready for this? The stone structures that sat out front? Who wouldn't want to marvel at such a great monument? I mean, she did that for a purpose. Obviously, that she wanted to remain. You know, why would you put people's faces? And watch this, I'm closing. And she even had the grace to even place on those brick monuments the lives lost of the 168 men, women, and children in the A.P. Mall Federal Building bomb, and tell you what her mindset was. That affected her greatly. So I'm saying to you, if this board, if you would take your time, consider what has been said here today, and know that you, are you ready for this, can, in fact, become a part of the historical preservation of the Freedom Fund. You want to know why? Because you have made history if you approve it. It hasn't been done yet. So if you do it, then you're a part of it yourself. Thank you very much for allowing me your time to speak. And as y'all know, I'm long-winded, but I'm going to cut myself off. But thank y'all very much for allowing me to speak. Thank y'all for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, what do you know? All right. I think there's a question. We're not going to accept this or recommend it, right? Any comments on the
Staff prepare all of the information. Very well done. Very, it's really well written, and I hope you all enjoyed also staff's efforts on that. I thought it was really well written and very educational. So, thank you.
I have a hard time separating history from historic preservation and the buildings we talk about, and we had some talk about changing names of schools and all of that, and I wasn't really sure how we interfaced with all of that, but I've done some marketing of homes that were in Oklahoma City in historic preservation, the governor's mansion. That's kind of significant, but this surpasses anything that I've ever seen like this, because this is not only Oklahoma City, it's national, international for the African American community. So thank you for your efforts and your mother's efforts. Thank you.
Yes. The right side? Comments?
Well, I would just add, echo what Dr. Fisher said, that in the national scheme of things, in North Carolina gets a lot of the publicity for the sit-ins that they did, and Oklahoma City was way before North Carolina. And I think they probably took inspiration from Ms. Luper's work and those courageous kids that went with her.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anybody else? Is there a motion to what will be the?
Neela's not here. She usually does our recommendations.
A recommendation.
Do we just say
to the
how
planning
to do
commission?
this?
Motion to recommend,
to recommend
and to adopt the resolution.
Motion to recommend and adopt the resolution.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Joe Meacham and seconded by Klaus Ryman. Philip, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's recommended to the Planning Commission and on to the City Council. Thank you.
We have many administrative approvals, a couple of withdrawals for work that will not be proceeding, and I don't think any of our other boards or entities have anything to report at this time.
Ad hoc committee. Okay, anything from the municipal councilor? Nope. All right, well, the next regularly scheduled meeting for the Historic Preservation Commission is June 29th at 2 p.m. at the Municipal Building, City Council Chamber. New applications for this meeting were received June 5th. Well, will be received June 5th. New information on projects continued from today's meeting to the upcoming meeting will also be due 4 p.m. Tuesday, June 5th. The next regularly scheduled workshop for the Historic Preservation Commission is Wednesday, June 13th from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. at 420 West Main, Suite 900.
13.
All right. Are there any items from commissioners? Any citizens? One last word? No? So if there's nothing else, then we're adjourned. Thank you. There being no further business?